Hello, and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, Rob. In today's video, we're going to be reviving my old series, Does This Class Suck? We are going to be taking a look at the Purple Dragon Knight, also known as the Banneret. Although why you would call yourself a Banneret instead of a Purple Dragon Knight is completely beyond me, because Purple Dragon Knight sounds way cooler. So we're just going to go with that for the bulk of this video. This is one of these subclasses, again, that came from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, the gift that keeps on giving. And it has a very weak reputation. And I don't think it's entirely deserved. I do think that some of the abilities this class has aren't too bad. But there are a lot of limitations and there are some real problems with it as well. So we're going to cover the abilities and then I'm going to give my thoughts on the subclass overall. And, just kind of discuss do I really think it's as bad as its reputation has made it out to be? Or do I think maybe there's some redeeming features? So, starting out, obviously you're going to have the base fighter abilities. We're not going to go into those. We're just going to cover the specific ones for this subclass. At level 3, when you choose Purple Dragon Knight, you get Rallying Cry. When you use your Second Wind ability, you can heal up to 3 other allies within 60 feet of you for hit points equal to your fighter level. So, as long as they can see or hear you. So here's the thing. 60 feet is actually a pretty good range. Being able to heal up to 3 other allies is actually a lot of healing. Even if it's only 3 points to each of those, right? And then you're healing yourself, of course, for your D10 plus your fighter level. So you're getting a D10 plus 3 at level 3. And there's some scaling there. If you're level 10, you're healing everybody for 10 hit points, right? And on a class that has no healing, that's not a bad ability, The problem I have, though, is that it requires me to be able to use my Second Wind ability. And maybe I need to heal, but my allies don't, right? Maybe I'm the only guy in the front line. I'm the only one taking damage. And nobody's really able to benefit from this ability. Or everybody takes a lot of damage, in which case, 3 or 5 or even 10 points of healing if I'm 10th level isn't really a lot of healing at that point. Now, maybe that's enough to revive somebody, and then the cleric or druid or bard or whoever, paladin perhaps, is going to heal them further. That can be a possibility, right? Being able to revive a downed ally at a 60-foot range is pretty good. It's a bonus action that's healing me and them. I actually think this is a pretty solid ability, but like I said, there are some limitations. It's really best in a situation where I've taken some damage and everybody else is taking a little bit of damage, and I can just sort of top a bunch of people up at once. Anyways, level 7, Royal Envoy. So you gain proficiency on the Persuasion skill. Nothing wrong with that. Persuasion is a great skill. If you already have proficiency with Persuasion, you can instead choose Animal Handling, Insight, Intimidation, or Performance. So I like that if I wanted to have Persuasion already, I'm not losing out on choice. I can start with that, and then now I get one of these 4 instead, right? So if I wanted to be persuasive, I'm not having to wait until I'm level 7 to get the ability for free, just so I don't waste it kind of thing. I could take it at the beginning if I wanted. I could take it for free at level 7 here when I get it, right? Either way, I'm getting some other ones in there as other options. Also, any skill check using Persuasion gets W proficiency bonus. So basically, you just have expertise in Persuasion. And note, it's still with Persuasion, even if you chose Animal Handling or Intimidation or whatever else at level 7, right? So if you already had Persuasion and now you got to choose a different skill, you do not get expertise in that skill. You still only have it with Persuasion, essentially. But, like I said, Persuasion is a great skill. That's not too bad. I don't know that I'm going to have a lot of charisma necessarily, but you never know, I might, right? And either way, even if I only have 10 charisma or 12 charisma, let's say 12 for a +1 bonus, getting double my proficiency bonus is still going to mean I'm pretty good at persuasion rolls, So that's not a bad ability either, I don't think, at all. Level 10, we get Inspiring Surge. When you use Action Surge, one ally within 60 feet of you can make a melee or ranged weapon attack if they can see or hear you. You get to affect 2 allies within 60 feet of you at 17th level. So this ability can be really good, especially if you have a rogue or someone in your party, and now they can attack on your turn, allowing them to sneak attack a second time in the combat round, that could be really, really good. But even just allowing one ally is usually going to be pretty good. I will note, however, number one, this does require that ally to use a ranged or melee weapon. So if you've got a bunch of spellcasters in your party, there's probably not going to be a lot of benefit. You know, maybe they have a crossbow they can fire off if they had it ready, or fire off a sling or something. But, you know, a lot of them are probably going to be using cantrips, or else they're going to be casting leveled spells, in which case there's not really going to be a lot of benefit there. But I do think that if you are able to plan a party, and maybe you have like a rogue, and that rogue's like, oh, cool, whenever you use that ability, I'm going to be able to use this. That's not too bad. I will point out, however, that Battlemaster has got a similar ability, and they could have chosen it at level 3, or 7, or 10. So, you know, just saying, you're not entirely unique here. But, like I said, it's not a bad ability. Just giving somebody else the ability to attack when you action surge is pretty decent. The big limiting factor here, again, though, is that it's tied to you having to action surge. And, you know, if you didn't want to action surge against this particular enemy, or if you're trying to save action surge for, like, the big boss fight, then, you know, you're not really giving any utility. It's always possible that you just miscalculated how many hit points the enemy had. You action surge, and then you kill the guy, and now your ally is just like, oh, cool, I could have snuck, used a sneak attack, but I guess he's already dead. Still, though, it's not a bad ability, and the fact that I can get 2 abilities at 17th level if the campaign goes that high is pretty decent. And finally, we get Bulwark at level 15. If you use Indomitable to reroll an Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma saving throw, one ally within 60 feet of you who also failed versus the same effect can reroll as well. They have to use a new result, and like all your other abilities, they have to be able to see or hear you, right? Again, being able to reroll a failed saving throw is awesome, and if you got hit with like a, you know, AoE spell that, you know, causes like a hypnotic pattern or a confusion or some sort of like beguiling type spell, then this ability can be really good, because presumably somebody else in the party is probably going to miss. However, again, there are some problems with this. Number one, I have to use Indomitable, which really means that I probably had to fail the saving throw myself, right? So if I pass the saving throw and all my allies fail and I'm the only one who succeeded, nobody's going to be able to benefit from this because I'm not using Indomitable. I mean, I guess technically I could use Indomitable anyways and re-roll my successful saving throw and then hope that I succeed again and give somebody else the ability to re-roll. But, I mean, that's getting kind of risky if I'm the only one in that situation, right? So again, it's not that it's a bad ability, right? But again, it's tied to us using an ability which we're only going to use if we happen to also fail. And if I'm trying to help an ally pass their saving throw, I mean, this is no like Flash of Genius, for example, right, from the Artificers, you know, where they can just use their reaction and give somebody else a big bonus to their saving throw. Or themselves, right? This is like, oh, I failed a saving throw versus these specific categories of spells, right? Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, you know? And then an ally also failed their saving throw versus that same effect, and now I can help them re-roll. And, I mean, again, like I said, not bad, because these are very debilitating saving throws usually, right? If you're failing a Charisma saving throw, you're probably getting banished or something. If you're failing a Wisdom saving throw, you're probably being mind controlled or incapacitated or confused or whatever else. Intelligence, you're probably being feeble-minded or, you know, whatever. Hopefully you're not getting killed by intellect devourers by the time you're level 15, but you never know. You know, so these are very debilitating types of saving throws, usually from those, you know, from those saves, right? So again, it can be good, but it's tied to us needing to use Indomitable. So that covers the main abilities. And now I want to talk about like the real issue that I think I personally have with the class. Like I said, I don't think this class is as bad as its reputation makes it out to be. I don't think that it's phenomenally strong though either, right? I mean, when you compare it to like an Echo Knight, for example, The Battle Master is really solid. You know, I don't really see a lot to choose this over those. I mean, the Battle Master also has like they have commanding strike and rallying maneuver, which can give you a lot of these same type of abilities more or less, and you can use them multiple times. You could use them, they're recharging on a short rest. I mean, I guess technically these are mostly two because it's action surge or it's a second wind or whatever. But the problem is that they're all tied to me using my abilities. And that's not necessarily bad because they're all great abilities and I'm going to be using them anyway, right? I'm going to be using Action Surge. I'm going to be healing myself. I'm going to be re-rolling saving throws at some point, right? So it's not that those things are bad, but if I'm the only one who gets hit with a banishment spell, for example, using Bulwark to re-roll is only or Indomitable Sword to re-roll is only helping me. There's nobody else for me to affect, so Bulwark isn't going to do anything in that circumstance, right? Like I said, if I don't have anybody else with a good melee or ranged weapon attack, then all my spellcasters being able to like throw a rock at somebody or bash them with a staff isn't really that effective. I think that this subclass can do really well when you have a bunch of people who all kind of make their party together and sort of plan things out. And someone's like, oh, I'm thinking of playing a rogue. And you're like, ooh, we could try this combination, right? I'll try the Purple Dragon Knight and you can play the rogue and I can use my abilities to give you an extra attack perhaps, There can be some nice synergy there, right? If if you don't have or if you have like maybe one healer but nobody else, right? Like you don't have a paladin as a backup healer or anything like that. You just got one cleric. Then you being able to help heal in combat isn't necessarily a bad ability either, right? On the other hand, if you have like a Twilight cleric or somebody, and they're just throwing out temporary hit points every round, then Rallying Cry isn't going to do much either in that case, right? So I think that there's a lot of cool abilities, but there's also a lot of redundancy. And I don't necessarily like how everything's tied to me having to use my abilities. I wish that they were kind of independent and I could make more strategic choices, kind of like how a Battle Master could with their maneuvers, right? If it was, say, tied to my, I don't know, like my proficiency bonus or my constitution bonus or something like that, and then a number of times per long rest, let's say, I could use like a Rallying Cry and heal people, or I could use like Inspiring Surge and give somebody else an attack action, right? But it wasn't necessarily tied to me having to action surge to do it. I think I might like that a little more. It would give me more strategic choices and it would kind of make it more independent from me having to use my abilities in order to benefit anybody else. So, like I said, I don't think it's necessarily the subclass itself is as terrible as a lot of people make it out to be. I think a lot of people really kind of dunk on it because you're playing a fighter, and generally, if you play a fighter, you kind of want to be like really good at fighting, and all your subclass abilities are generally buffing other people or allowing other people in the party to do things, right? It's healing them, it's allowing them to attack, it's allowing them to reroll a saving throw, right? Obviously, you got your level 7 ability where you can, be persuasive, but that's not necessarily a bad ability either by any means. So I think though that a lot of people, if you want to be a good fighter, you want to be the fighter, right? And I'm not saying that that's a bad attitude. I mean, you could maybe argue that it's selfish, but that's okay. Like, I think everybody wants their character to be cool. Everybody wants a chance to shine. And while I think that the commander battlefield type guy who's trying to inspire their allies and make their allies better is a really cool idea, I think that a lot of people aren't necessarily drawn to it because they'd rather just, have cool maneuvers or have spells that could help them out or just get lots of crits because crits are fun, I think that a lot of people who want to play fighter are more drawn to like subclasses that give you actual fighting abilities rather than kind of like buffing your allies or helping your allies. And like I said, I don't think that that's necessarily anything wrong with it. A lot of times, like we are forming a party if you're like a generalist and you're kind of decent at everything, that's really good in a small party where you've only got 2 or 3 player characters. But as the party gets bigger, the generalist who's kind of good at everything but not great at anything really feels really lackluster, because that barbarian who's recklessly attacking with his great axe and using great weapon mastery and is just crushing stuff, the gloomstalker who's firing away with sharpshooter, and both of those guys are just doing a truckload of damage, and you've got like the cleric who's got the healing stuff under control, and you've got like all these people who are kind of specialized in different roles. Maybe you've got a wizard who's just using a lot of like battlefield control spells and a lot of crowd control, and they really they section people off with like walls of force and just cut the enemies in half and stuff, essentially, right? And then you've got a guy who just kind of like, oh, I'm kind of decent at everything, and you can really feel left behind. So I don't want to say that it's selfish to make a character who wants to excel at combat. That's part of the game, and I think everybody who wants to do that has every right to do that. I also don't think that support characters are by any means necessarily a bad thing. But I do think that there are other characters who can fulfill the support role much better than the Purple Dragon Knight, unfortunately. And the Purple Dragon Knight, you still got all the base fighter abilities, you still have a lot of really nice things in your kit. You've got, extra attack. You could be potentially getting 3 attacks around, or even 4 if your campaign goes all the way to 20, You've got action surge. You've got a lot of decent abilities still. It's just that most of the abilities that come from your subclass are benefiting the party, not you. And like I said, that's not a bad thing, right? But I do wish that it was maybe a little more strategic of when I wanted to use them, and wasn't tied to me using my abilities. Because like I said, if I'm the only one injured and I use Second Wind, I'm not really getting any benefit from that ability. If I use Action Surge and I don't have anybody else in a position to be able to attack, then again, nobody else is benefiting from that ability, right? If I'm the only one who gets targeted by that charisma saving throw or that intelligence saving throw, then nobody else is benefiting if I use Indomitable. Or like I said, if I pass a saving throw and one guy in the party fails, it's like, well, I mean, am I really gonna risk failing it again just so I can try to potentially give him a reroll? I mean, that's kind of a rough call, and I'm still having to use Indomitable in that case. What if I need it for my next round of combat? Maybe we all got feared by a dragon, or potentially feared by a dragon, and like I said, 3 people pass, 1 guy misses. Do I want to risk getting feared just so I can give him the chance to re-roll again? That's kind of a risky move, especially since I've now used Indomitable and I may not have it for myself again, right? So I think that there are a lot of reasons for why people kind of disparage the class, but I do think that the abilities themselves aren't necessarily bad. I find that the 60-foot range is really big. The fact that they're all pretty good abilities. Being able to heal somebody, helping somebody reroll a saving throw, giving somebody an extra attack. None of those abilities are bad abilities, right? So, at the end of the day, I'm kind of left thinking like the abilities themselves are pretty good, but they're very restricted as well. You're pretty much getting like once per short rest type of things out of each of these. They require me to use other abilities that I might not have wanted to use in that circumstance. We kind of require allies who are, under the right circumstances to be able to use those abilities as well. So there is a lot of plus, but there's also a lot of negative. And at the end of the day, it's really hard to go wrong with just, one of the other subclasses where you maybe don't have a lot of like niche abilities that you're going to be able to use under some circumstances. You don't have to worry about like, oh, what if nobody else in the party made like a high damage guy who's going to be able to benefit from attacking on my turn, We've got literally just a bunch of casters, You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff when you're playing, like an Eldritch Knight, for example, or whatever, right? Or, even like that Psy Knight or Rune Knight or any of them, right? Like they're all pretty self-reliant, And I think that's one of the things that people generally like about fighters in 5th edition is fighter is a very complete class. You know, they don't really rely on or need a lot of other things outside them for them to perform well. Obviously, having a bunch of allies who play their classes well just makes the whole party in general better, and that helps the fighter as well. But I mean, I've seen fighters that try to really concentrate on being like a defensive force and protect their allies, and they've done quite well. I've seen fighters who just wanted to just do as much damage as they possibly could, and they've done quite well. I've seen, you know, great weapon fighters and ranged fighters using bows or crossbows or hand crossbows or whatever else, right? I've seen like 2-weapon fighters. And the truth is, all of them are fairly effective. You can argue about, you know, maybe this one's better than that one or whatever. But all of them get the job done, right? They all do a lot of damage, especially once you start pushing up to like 11 plus and they start getting that 3rd attack around, and you know, now you're action surging, you're attacking 6 times. Like, they start doing some pretty crazy amounts of damage, especially when they have things like Great Weapon Mastery or Sharpshooter to just like amp that damage up even more, just stacking damage on every single one of those hits. So at the end of the day, I don't blame people for like maybe hating on the Purple Dragon Knight. I don't think it's absolutely awful, for example. But I also get why people don't necessarily like it a lot. I think that a lot of the abilities, while nice, are very limited. They're tied to me having to use abilities. They're circumstantial uses, and none of it really helps you to like perform better as a character. And at the end of the day, you know, everybody wants to have those moments where their character really gets to shine and be cool. And if you're not the kind of guy who likes playing a support, which can have, you know, those moments to shine as well, right? Sometimes just boosting everybody else in the party is that moment to shine. And people who play supports really like that aspect of those characters. But I think that if you wanted to be a support, you may not have chosen fighter. And frankly, there are better support options out there. So at the end of the day, I don't know if the class sucks per se, but I do think it's one of the weaker subclasses for fighter. I think at low levels, it still performs quite well. I think that Rallying Cry is a really good ability at low levels. I think that, you know, like if you compare it to a champion straight up at low levels, I think Rallying Cry is a lot better than doubling my crit chance at level 3. The problem is, though, that I think the champion seems to scale better, especially at the back half. Once you start getting like to 11 plus and stuff, the champion, just by virtue of having so many attacks around, just begins critting more and more. And frankly, champions is kind of a fun subclass to play, you know? Everybody loves getting critical hits. Even when you're not the one getting a crit, you see your ally roll a critical hit on the other side of the table. Everybody gets excited. It's just fun, you know? Is it a deep subclass? No, but it can still be pretty cool. And I think that, you know, getting things like expertise on, essentially, on persuasion, you know, it's nice, but we might have had a bard or somebody in the party who could also have had expertise and has charisma, you know? Like I said, something like Inspiring Surge and giving that rogue that extra attack, that's pretty good. But I could have done that on a Battle Master, and I could have had that ability at level 3 instead of level 10. And I could have done it 4 times for short rest, potentially, if I wanted to just use all my superiority dice on that rogue instead of once per short rest, you know? Some of those other options are just a lot more powerful, frankly. And I think especially as you get to higher and higher levels with this class, I really just feel like it's just not giving as much interesting stuff, you know? Like level 10, your ability is pretty cool, right? The Inspiring Surge is good. But like 15, Bulwark, I mean, it's nice, but rerolling a failed saving throw isn't exactly, you know, the most exciting thing ever. And like I said, it's a really good ability. I personally hate failing saving throws. So, you know, I like that. But, you know, the wizard is getting 8th level spells. You know, which one of those is better? Pretty sure it's the wizard getting 8th level spells, for example. But anyways, those are my thoughts on the subclass. I'm starting to ramble and repeat myself now. So I think you basically get the idea. Because it's not that it's awful. I just don't think that it's really strong either. Oh, the other thing I was going to say about the champion is that I think the champion multi-class is a lot better. There's a lot of classes that combined with doubling your crit chance really start to shine, right? And I don't know that dipping 3 levels to just be able to throw out some minor healing is really much of a draw to people if you want to, take fighter, right? So there's that as well, right? Your healing isn't going to scale because it's scaling with your fighter levels. Maybe you go to level 5 and get extra attack, but I just feel like you probably could have picked up, say, an Eldritch Knight and had the shield spell and the absorb element spell and maybe even had a familiar, That's probably going to be a much more advantageous 5 level dip in my opinion. But anyways, that's everything. Feel free to, sorry, I was going to say, my next video that I'm hoping to come out with probably in 2-3 days, hopefully, is going to be another fighter subclass. We're going to do the Echo Knight, which we haven't covered yet either. I'm pleased to say that we're going from one of the most maligned subclasses with the Purple Dragon Knight and going to one of the most highly praised, and for good reason. The Echo Knight is spectacular. I had a viewer who specifically requested a dexterity build, so I'm going to just cover Echo Knight in general, and we might take a look at a couple different builds, right? We might look at some strength builds, maybe look at a melee dex, and maybe even a ranged dex build, right? Because I think that there's a lot of ways you could build an Echo Knight. And like I said, Echo Knights are awesome, so pretty hard to go wrong there. After that, the next video, we're going to be going back to the multi-class and tier list, and we're going to be on Monk, because we're going in alphabetical order. I'll probably follow that up with some more Monk subclass videos, because to be fair, I haven't done a lot of Monk. Anybody who's watched my channel a lot probably knows my thoughts on Monk. They're not exactly my favorite class in the game. I want to like them, right? I really like, that kind of martial arts and like anime-inspired type of character. I think that there's a lot of cool themes there. I just don't think that monks are particularly well designed, which I've talked about a bunch. We're not going to get into it at the end of my fighter video. We'll talk about that more when we get to the monk videos. That's not to say that monks are useless, though. I want to be clear about that. I think monks have kind of, at the beginning, people really defended them, and when people like me were kind of critical of them, I'd often, my most disliked video ever was my Way of the Four Elements monk video, right? Because I had some negative things to say about them. But I think now the pendulum swung the other way, and people just absolutely hate on monks and treat monks like they're just the worst thing in the entire game. And I don't know that that's entirely fair either, right? They are kind of weak in some areas. I personally love multiclassing, and they're generally poor at that because, well, of lots of reasons, but not being able to wear armor while using monk abilities is definitely one of them. But like I said, we'll get into that when we talk about monks. But anyways, I don't think that it's really fair to just absolutely hate on monks either, despite the fact that I still think they're one of the weakest classes in the game. So anyways, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time. Bye.